Just imagine, during preseason, it all appeared to be fresh hope and optimism. Life was going great, fueled by nothing but dreams and ambition. At some photo shoots, drivers were instructed to put their season goals on paper, and one of them was Charles Leclerc. One of the lines was, "This year, I will be," and Charles, without any hesitation, penned, "A world champion." Hold up, wait a second, pause. Let's take a moment and really absorb this. Charles is, currently, in the fifth stage of grief. I've never witnessed a more precise personification of acceptance in my life. His path is like, it's part of motorsport, it's like this. Unfortunately, it's like this. It's like this. Charles's salary must be going directly to his therapist at this point, because the amount of emotional upheaval he's experienced is immense. Honestly, it feels like he's in a never-ending cycle of heartbreak, and then forgiveness repeatedly. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, not literally, of course, but emotionally, he's been bound to a team that just keeps dashing his hopes. That type of loyalty, though infrequent and potent, has also been his undoing. The more he pours himself into that dream of a world championship, the more difficult it gets to leave it behind. And that is the cold, hard truth of Formula One. Not everybody gets an equal opportunity at a championship. You may be one of the greatest drivers of all time, but poor timing and some bad luck might take that away from you in a split second. We've all seen drivers with great ability who never had the chance to raise that trophy. Consider legends like Gene Alesi, Robert Kubica, Ronnie Peterson, Jackie Stewart, and Sterling Moss, perhaps some of the greatest to never win the championship. Another name to add to that list is the late Gilles Villeneuve, a driver whose F1 career was tragically cut short before he could even come close to reaching his full potential. Now, I never had the privilege of seeing Villeneuve compete live, but there's a quote by an esteemed journalist that sums up his remarkable legacy perfectly. Enzo Ferrari was forever attracted to 100% races, even with all their flaws. Gilles knew only one gear flat out. That attracted him far more than anything else. He was a helpful and nice man with his heart on his sleeve. He was loved by the fans not only for his speed, but for his audacity, his charisma, and because he bled Ferrari red. Charles Leclerc is in many ways the modern-day spirit of Gilles Villeneuve. He's scorchingly quick, tearfully emotional, and personally tied to Ferrari. Like Villeneuve, he doesn't race to win, but to pay homage to the prancing horse. Charles has become a symbol of hope for Ferrari, a driver whose story seems destined for greatness, even if that destiny continues to be delayed. Ferrari is a team with more history, more fans, and more passion than any other, but for nearly 2 decades, it feels like that passion has been misguided. Ferrari has been stuck in a perpetual internal war, plagued by politics, ego, and instability. These troubles overshadowed their performance, leading to constant reshuffling of team principals, muddling strategic decisions, and leaving everyone guessing who exactly in charge. And in the midst of all the mess stands one of the most gifted drivers of this era. We hear a great deal about generational talents in Formula One drivers who come onto the scene and walk away with the title in the first year. Consider names such as Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen. They're the drivers who not only rule an era, but create it. But what of the drivers whose abilities do not match their achievements during the course of their careers? Are they generational talents, or are they only remembered for what they might have done? It's not a new story in Formula One. Several drivers have been put in the same boat. Daniel Ricciardo's best was marred by Mercedes' domination, robbing him of a proper chance at a championship. Fernando Alonso is an exception, already a 2-time world champion, beating Michael Schumacher at the height of his tyranny. But his career might have been even more mythical had things turned out differently. Because the fact is, being a successful F1 driver is just half of it. The competitiveness of the car comes into play, but so does the stability of the team, how they evolve the car over the season, their calls on strategy, and so much more. Ferrari, with its record for being the most successful team in history, has that burden of huge expectations. However, they've consistently underperformed, keeping their gifted drivers in a frustration loop. Since the Schumacher Golden Era, one championship victory with Kimi in 2007 and the 2008 Constructors' title, Ferrari has not won anything of real substance. However, in the last 7 years, there has been one driver who has maintained the hope of a return to glory alive. If there's anyone who should be the one to bring a championship back to Maranello, it's Charles Leclerc. Sebastian Vettel, during his farewell tour in 2020, wrote a heartfelt message to his former teammate, saying, "Charles, you were the most talented driver I've come across in 15 years in F1. Don't waste it." Unfortunately, it's clear Ferrari hasn't fully listened to his advice. Charles has been hands down the best driver this year, but again, the car hasn't been able to keep up with his exceptional talent. Up to now, he's bagged 3 podiums. The first podium was in Saudi Arabia, which happens to be one of his tracks. Over this weekend, he made a tentative move with his equipment, loosening the SF25 at the back so that he could get more out of a car that has been slower than its rivals all season. His second podium finish occurred in Monaco's season's best weekend to date. He was agonizingly close to claiming pole position, but Lando Norris stole it from him at the final moment. Nevertheless, his show in Monaco shouldn't be a shocker. History has proven just how magical Charles is on Monte Carlo's streets. His third podium in Spain was similar to Jeddah coincidence, as other drivers erred, but Charles was there to take advantage of their mistake, and that's all one needs. Other notable mentions are Bahrain and Japan, but aside from those occasions, the car just hasn't been fast enough for Charles to close the gap. It's difficult to recall that only a year ago, he was racing his heart out, charging from P19 to P3 in Abu Dhabi, hoping it would be enough to seal the constructor's title. But fast forward to the present, and now they're nearly 200 points behind champions McLaren. It's a bitter truth, but Charles has learned to accept this at this point. Let me make one thing clear. Charles hasn't had a great 2024. Between Silverstone and Canada, his luck simply ran out. Engine problems in Montreal, a botched upgrade in Spain which caused porpoising, and the issues persisted in the British Grand Prix. There, Ferrari experimented with Charles driving many unusual setups in an attempt to identify the source of their problems. During the race, the team had him run several laps on intermediate tires under a dry circuit. His race engineer kept gaslighting him into believing that the rain would arrive any moment, claiming, "The rain is coming this lap." Actually, no, wait, it's next lap. Okay, my bad, it's the lap after. Just one more lap, then we'll be faster than everyone. And then came Austria, where Charles was taken out on lap 1. But aside from that very short stretch of poor results, Charles was virtually impeccable. Prior to Canada, he had been scoring podiums consistently, and his emotional triumph in Monaco was one to be remembered. Following Silverstone, he was truly excellent, handling his tires to perfection and winning Monza. He was also superb in the subsequent race in Baku. It's a pity that McLaren's Mini DRS made it that hard for him to overtake Oscar Piastri when he had DRS. And in Texas, Charles produced another masterclass. Even the races in which Charles didn't win, but still put up great drives, tended to go unnoticed. Hungary, Zandvoort, and Belgium say that those were miraculous drives. In light of the fact that Ferrari had not even completed their massive upgrade package that ultimately arrived in Monza, the mere fact that Charles was able to get the most out of it was nothing short of miraculous. His performance in Abu Dhabi in 2022 was one of a champion. Even though he missed out on the title, he was naturally devastated. The hope was that momentum would carry over into 2023, but unfortunately, Ferrari has continually failed to meet expectations year after year. This is a topic we'll delve deeper into in a separate video, but the reality is, Ferrari's repeated mistakes have cost Charles a legitimate chance at a championship. Now, I'll be the first to say that no driver is entitled to a top car in this sport. You just get what you're given and make the best of it. Still, it's incredibly frustrating to watch a driver like Charles perform literal miracles at times, only to be constantly let down by the team. And as much as I do admit that there have been some equally skilled drivers who've been worse off, most prominently Fernando Alonso, at least his legacy will always be cemented in the history books as a double world champion. Although his talent deserved better, he was able to show it. But Charles hasn't even been given a chance to fight for a title yet. The 2022 season brought Charles closest to a proper title fight, and even then, it was not quite a title fight. That year actually is one of the biggest pieces of evidence that Ferrari squandered Charles's talent. He started the season in style, winning the Bahrain Grand Prix, where his wheel-to-wheel duels with Max Verstappen made the victory all the more special. This was Charles making a clear statement early in the season, reminding us all why he's such a dominant force. They had it out again in Jeddah. But this time, Verstappen emerged victorious. The expectation was that this would be the beginning of a fiery rivalry, but from there on out, everything, and I mean everything, fell apart for Charles. It became one of the most unlucky streaks I've ever seen a driver endure. Prime Ferrari incompetence at its finest. Race after race, Charles kept facing problem after problem, from poor reliability costing him wins in both Spain and Baku, to the Baku failure forcing him to start from the back of the grid in Canada. This prevented him from even challenging for the win. And then the strategic mistakes: Ferrari squandering an easy victory at Monaco because the pit wall couldn't read radar or talk to save their lives. At Silverstone, Ferrari pitted only one side for fresh tires during the safety car, leaving Charles out on worn hard tires. For all his justified annoyance, he fought tooth and nail for every spot, but ultimately drivers with newer and softer tires glided past him. The day was Ferrari's only chance to take advantage of the damaged car of Max Verstappen and chip into his championship advantage. But what did we witness? Matteo Binotto shaking his finger at Charles after the race, as if Ferrari itself was actively conspiring against him. How do you put a driver through all that, then tell him, "Yeah, we know you're angry and it's our fault, but don't you dare make us look bad because we're Ferrari"? Austria provided some glimmer of hope, as Charles gave a top-class performance and a dominating win to prove that his title aspirations weren't completely over. And yet, just one race thereafter, France ensued. Charles himself owned up to the error, but Ferrari was involved in it again. Red Bull had pushed them into pitting early to undercut, and therefore Ferrari strategists planned to leave Charles on as long as possible to get a tire offset. In doing so, they instructed him to go as hard as he could, as fast as he could, without taking too much of a risk, in spite of his fight with high tire degradation based on the temperature. One little error and bam, the disaster occurred, and Charles never really recovered after that. Ferrari committed another brain fade in Hungary, fitting Charles on hard tires on a dry track, and they also had to reduce their engines due to reliability problems. The coup de grace came in the form of T39, a technical directive mandating teams to lift the ride height of the car. This was disastrous for Ferrari, as most of their performance had been generated by taking the car low down. Consequently, Ferrari lost significant performance and dropped behind Red Bull further, as Red Bull outdeveloped them throughout the year. All that aside, Ferrari might have been able to take the title battle down to the final race had they not squandered so many points at the beginning of this. When Charles initially burst into life back in 2018, we all envisioned the gigantic potential that he possessed. However, it appears that Ferrari's errors have prevented him from achieving the heights that he so deserves. Charles Leclerc was getting things done on the track that was inexplicable, achieved tasks so astounding that Ferrari couldn't help but sign him. There was just no way they could let a talent such as this go to waste. His arrival in 2019 was the fulfillment of a lifelong ambition, yet he entered a seat that was full of pressure. An iconic heritage, the burden of a whole nation on his shoulder, and a four-time world champion as his teammate. But from the very first race in Bahrain, Charles shrugged all that off. He was like a veteran, almost unbeatable. The only reason he was halted that day was an engine problem, but that show of speed became the template for the rest of the season. If his first year wasn't enough to demonstrate that something was cooking, this race shut down all the critics who believed his advancement had been premature. He wasn't there to be his teammate's sidekick, he was there to take Ferrari as his team. 2019 was the year Charles won over the hearts of the Tifosino, just through his relentless speed and fearless nature, but more so through his triumph in the face of adversity. The emotional toll of that weekend in Spa is something that most people can't fully appreciate. Most wouldn't have had the mental fortitude to even get into the car, let alone deliver a race win. Then, with back-to-back victories in Monza on the line, 2 silver arrows in hot pursuit, Charles did not buckle. He clung for dear life, and as he sped across the line, you could hear the Tifosi roar. That was it. Ferrari supporters all over the world knew that this young man was the future, but the very next year it all fell apart. The team hit a low point. The car was appalling slow on the straights, gimpy in corners, and being outgunned by the midfield. Conveniently enough, this drastic fall-off in performance, particularly with the power unit, was after the FIA added a second sensor to suppress Ferrari from taking advantage of the fuel flow system. This caused Ferrari to lose around 50 brake horsepower from their rival. On top of that, they were also aero-inefficient, i.e., the car was producing less downforce than drag. Their wind tunnel figures weren't correlating too well to what they were seeing on track, and in short, Ferrari went from having one of the quickest cars on the grid to battling at the back of the midfield. The only redeeming feature of Charles was how he went about completing P2 during the season opener in Austria, feat in itself that was superhuman. And the irony is, I don't even believe that was his strongest drive for the year. The successive races at Silverstone found him in a different league. Portimao was another classic display of drive, a masterclass in tire management. It was in this season that Charles finally came into the ranks of the elite, bringing his racecraft to the levels of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. You might almost say he was outperforming in a car that shouldn't have been doing so well, but Ferrari's internal instability didn't prevent him from getting more out of it than most people believed he could. It's been something of an erratic ride so far for Charles. His devotion to Ferrari is a two-edged sword, and it's not simply about passion. It's about doing something he was destined for, living out a dream that his godfather, Jules Bianchi, who painfully never got the opportunity to live, had ordained for him. Charles also competes in honor of his father, who believed in his career right until the day he died in 2017, and his friend, Antoine Hubert, who died at Spa, a day before Charles's first ever Grand Prix win. He idealizes Ferrari and continues to feel that one day he will be the one to reclaim them for greatness, that all the agony over the years will be worth it. But when does loyalty tip into self-sacrifice? There's a version of events in which Charles is already a world champion version, in which Ferrari are more efficient, harmonious, and worthy of a driver of his ability. But that is not the world we inhabit. His best years are being lost, year after year, holding out for Ferrari to sort themselves out. Sure, drivers do have prolonged peaks that extend into their mid to early 30s, but it's not a promise. So, where does Charles go from here? Does he remain and continue to hold out for the change to come, or does he move his talents somewhere else? If so, where does he go exactly? Mercedes has Russell and Antonelli under lock, McLaren has Norris and Piastri on lock, and who's to say switching to a team like Red Bull or Aston Martin would even be worth it? The chances are that Charles will hold on and have faith that Ferrari will get the right track, but if he does stay, it may end up hurting him. Loyalty is commendable, but in Formula One, it doesn't win championships. Complying with Ferrari is maintaining his trust in a system that has continually disappointed him. The longer he waits, the less opportunity will be left. I hope you enjoyed reading this analysis. Share your thoughts on Charles's predicament in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're new to the channel to stay updated with my latest videos.